Hey everyone, in this video we're going to talk about formatting the reference for a journal article, okay? And that journal article here that we're going to look at is in blue, okay? But I've included both a book right here, right, Lines of Brief History, and a chapter in an edited book, both of which we talked about in the last video as a reference because it starts to make more sense where the variations are happening. Okay, so I'm going to turn on the highlighter mouse here for a minute. Now let's go back and review. Again, APA, books are the core reference materials, and that's kind of where the structure of all references and variations on references come from as you change kinds of sources. So again, all APA references have last name, first initial, year, don't forget the period. The title of the source, right, in this case, the whole book, and the publisher. Don't forget the period at the end of all of your citations, okay? And remember that the structure is to cite the source material and kind of where that source material is housed. So in the case of a book, we're citing the whole book. It's housed, that source material is housed with the publisher, Routledge in this case. Okay, let's also kind of look at that pattern down here in that chapter in an edited book. If you remember, when an editor is editing a book, they're not necessarily writing any part of the book. They often write the introduction or the foreword or one chapter themselves, but they're editing multiple authors who are contributing to a particular topic. In this case, the book is called Complementary Methods for Research and Education. That's the title of the book. So that format matches the book title up here, right? First letter of the first word is capitalized. Everything else is weird, non-standard capitalization, right? It's all lowercase, and the book title is italicized. But what I'm actually citing here is Woolcott's chapter called Ethnographic Research and Education. Okay, and again, Ethnographic Research and Education as the chunk that I'm citing, its title follows that weird capitalization. First letter of the first word is capitalized, the others are not, but it's not italicized because it's the smaller component in the source that I'm talking about. That becomes important when we look at this journal article title because it's the same way. Psychological Science is the journal that the article is in, and The Pen is Mightier Than the Keyboard is the title of the article itself. So again, it's the smaller component of what I'm citing. So that matches the italicization rules of chapters in an edited book, right? The article is not italicized, the journal title is. The chapter is not italicized, the book title that the chapter is housed in is italicized. Following me here? Okay, now let's take a look at this journal article as a whole. There are a couple of other things in here. First, this is a journal article with two authors. Authors, as we talked about in the first overview of the references page, right? Whoever was listed first in the article is the alphabetization rule, right? Mueller is the first author, so they go first. Oppenheimer was the second author. So even though these two happen to be alphabetized, right, M comes before O, if Oppenheimer's name had been listed first in the article, then this entry would be under O and not M. You'll also notice here the ampersand. Did you know that was called an ampersand? Most people don't. They just recognize the symbol. The ampersand is something that comes into play in APA in that in a formal reference space, like on the references page or in a parenthetical citation, you would use the ampersand to separate Mueller and Oppenheimer. You wouldn't spell out and, A-N-D. But if you cited or mentioned Mueller and Oppenheimer's names in the body of a sentence, so if you said, Mueller and Oppenheimer argue that we should take notes by hand because it allows our brain to synthesize information more accurately, right? I said their names in the body of the sentence. When I was writing it out, I would write down Mueller, A-N-D, Oppenheimer, not Mueller ampersand Oppenheimer. Okay, so think about it as the difference between what you would say out loud and how awkward it would be to say Mueller ampersand Oppenheimer, say that I should take my notes with a pen. Right? It would be weird to say ampersand out loud. So think about it that way. But on the references page, that last author or that second author is going to be separated from the first by the ampersand. Standard last name, first initials, date is there, right? That's standard for all APA citations. And then we have the title of the journal article. Again, not italics because it's not the biggest component of what we're citing, right? It's the article title, not the journal title. Okay, but it does follow that weird, the first letter of the first word and the first letter of the first word following a colon are capitalized, but nothing else is. Now, this is where APA gets weird. Psychological Science is the title of the journal. It is normally capitalized, right? So it's not doing that. Psychological is capitalized, but science isn't. It's normal capitalization for journal titles, right? APA has to be confusing sometimes, I know. Okay, now the other piece here is that journals are published more than once a year. So here you have volume and issue. You are not going to put the words volume or issue, right? You don't need them. Okay, but you will notice that the volume is also italicized. Okay, and again, it has to do what's the biggest component here that we're citing, the journal title and the volume, because we want to know which year to look at and then which issue within the year. Okay, then you do have to put page numbers because just like a book chapter, right, there's more than one author writing in that book or in that journal, in that issue or in that copy. So you have to put the page numbers. You do not need for journals to put the PP, the abbreviation for multiple pages 327 to 371. For books, you do. For articles, you don't. Please don't ask me why. I don't have a good answer for you. That's just one of those quirks that you have to memorize. You need page numbers for books, but not for journal articles. And then, of course, you end that citation with that period. Okay, that's it for journal articles.